So welcome everyone. Here we go, build Matt. Hey everyone. So welcome to Monday. We have a few things in the read-only announcements section, which I'll let you go through in your own time. The only big thing I want to call out is with a few people out this week, there will be less of us around. Particularly, we talked a bit before, but you may get tagged on Ruby like backend reviews if needed. We have other options as well, but if Ruben needs to merge anything, we may need to help him. I am completely fine with us merging in something which we think looks good, even if you're like, I'm a little unsure about some pieces, right? Like we can always follow up in the next few weeks when Alessio and Myra are back if there's some stuff which we're like, it looks fine, but I don't know if it's absolutely the perfect way to do it. Don't worry about that. Like keep moving forwards and we can correct if we need to. And the other big thing I wanted to just mention is, since we're on the first call, congratulations, Skabek. Huge achievement, very well deserved on your promotion. Cool, so let's jump into the discussion items. So Michele and I are continuing to kind of work through the admin side for the team split. So we've now got, I think we have labeled all the existing delivery issues, so you'll have system or orchestration on there. And we're continuing, like Michele's working on the triage rules so that we can get that on future issues coming in as well. But I'm curious to hear, since I've got you all face to face, is as we're going into Q3 and we have OKRs and we're now looking kind of, we have two teams and we're sort of working on our separate goals. What do you need in order to be able to work more confidently or knowledgeably or happier? Like what do you need for sort of keeping things looking great as we have these two separate teams?
One thing that might be slightly tangentially related, I guess, we sort of have the team split and we have the epics and we have the governing OKRs as well. One thing that I think that I would at least personally find quite interesting is that because there's a lot of crossover between us and there's sort of combined efforts towards OKRs as well, it would be interesting to see whether on like a weekly or a monthly basis or however, whatever would make sense, how progress towards the completion of those OKRs was being furthered by the work that's actually being done, like sort of maybe being explicit about how those two things link up.
Yeah, that's a really great idea. Really great. One thing that has been always quite disconnected, I guess, is the OKRs are in Ali. Those get updated every week, but I suspect not very many people go into Ali and read through the OKRs in there. And they're actually even more perhaps interesting is that they all cascade up. So when we check in a contribution on one of our OKRs, it goes up and it contributes to the platform OKRs and to the infra OKRs right up through to the to Sid CEO OKRs. So they're very deliberately kind of lined up that way. So there is quite a lot of information in there, but it's a little bit tricky to hunt it out. So cool. Yeah, that's a really good suggestion. So let me have a little think about that. I'll say Michele and I are chatting about quite a lot of this stuff. So we'll feed in how we can also link that piece of information in as well.
I think the information that either you or Michele pop into our G-Delivery channel on Mondays is beneficial. It's usually not very specific to a target team member or anything. So I guess I'm curious as to what you're driving here is. Are we trying to improve the visibility of what individual team members are working on, or are we just are we trying to improve the visibility of what a given team is working on?
That's a great question. Originally, the actual motivation was to help people who weren't the DRI of a project know kind of which issue most useful to pick up. But now, though, this week's one was the first one where I've kind of thought, we can actually separate out and have two separate team things. But I guess, like, what would be most useful? Like, do you want it to be further broken down?
I don't think that's necessary, because I feel like at that point you're just calling me out because I don't do any work. So I think it'd be beneficial if we just say, hey, team X is doing Y and team Z is doing A, kind of thing, which I think the Monday updates captured okay. Maybe they could be a little bit more fine grade. I don't know. Like I think
put
they're
a bit
fine.
more in there. Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Something else I recently came across this morning was I noticed in the, I think it was What's Happening at GitLab channel, was that apparently the CEO OKRs, like Ally has some sort of Slack integration. So we saw details of his particular OKRs. I'm wondering if it'll be beneficial. No, you're not, sir. I wonder if it'd be beneficial to drop our OKRs, if possible. Like, I have no clue how that Ally Slack integration works. I wonder if that'd be beneficial to drop into the G delivery channel. I'm not sure how helpful that would be, because from what I saw this morning, it links to an OKR that links to a chart, and there's not really much else you could dive into there. You'd really have to go to GitLab and look at the actual epic or epics to really figure out what the, like, what's the real good status for things.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure how beneficial that would be, but it might be worth checking out if it, maybe useful. I do think it'd be cool to see the progress bar slowly creep to 100% over the course of, a month or so. But
I do agree. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I wonder, like, I almost wonder if we should consider putting something in the platforms Slack channel, so we have the platforms view. But yeah, I have to admit that was the first Slack integration I've seen of Ally things coming in. So yeah, it was pretty nice. I think it was a nice reminder of where things go. So okay. Awesome. Great, thanks for that. What I will do is Michele and I are continuing to work on this stuff. What I'm keen that we get to is where you have very distinct kind of team ownership areas, so that you don't have so much crossover and collaboration. Like, that will get easier as time goes on, but that's what I'm hoping we'll be able to reach, so that it isn't a case of necessary, I need to do this piece of work. I'm not quite sure. Some of it seems like it's system, some's orchestration. I'm not sure if it's in progress. Like, we certainly have broad enough domain and problems to be able to clearly cut this up for the team. So we're continuing to work through on that stuff. So Skabak, over to you.
This is less discussion and more of an announcement, but I'm trying to continue to work on narrowing down the scope we need for the work associated with reorganizing clusters and or contributing to the self-service mechanism from the side of team system. So the issue in the epic that I linked, I would like for the people that are interested to just keep tabs on this. I want to have a larger discussion during our Wednesday Kubernetes demo meeting. I just recently watched the recording from last week, so I've got some improvements that I need to make in general. So I'll be trying to work on that throughout earlier this week. That way we could have a larger discussion on Wednesday. So this is just a request to keep tabs on it. That way we could have a beneficial conversation on Wednesday instead of all of us thinking at the same time, not really knowing what to do. I've also asked Amy to please kindly join us in the meeting. That way she could help me keep things on track.
And kind of contributing to those things. So thanks for sharing those links, Skabak. keep in mind an option of whether we can go even broader than self-serve. One of the big unknown questions is, once we get to the end of moving components to self-serve, is there any room to do something to the monolithic deployment? I think it's a huge maybe right now. But actually, I think from the system side, you probably don't need to be constrained so much by that. Because I think in terms of the sort of visibility and the sort of improvements you can make on our kind of deployment capabilities don't necessarily have to be linked exclusively to self-serve. So keep that as an option. Certainly, I don't know how we would split up the actual deployment yet, but we will be reviewing that as we go along. Awesome. And then one contribution towards that stuff. So within orchestration, we've had one discussion of a kind of similar nature to this, which we had a couple of weeks ago before Alessio went out. And tomorrow, Fieldy, myself, and Graham have another similar one to try and sort of look at it from the orchestration side. What I'll do off the back of that meeting tomorrow is get our sort of demo discussion playlist set up so that those recordings can all live in there. So I'll ping that out to you like at some point tomorrow, so that then you can hopefully feed that into your conversations as well.
Thank you much.
Awesome. John, you
I'll
have the
just
next
verbalize
one.
the next one. I just saw that you opened up the retro, but I was just wondering if we could get what we did in the last quarter, because I never remember.
So I will try and pull it together. I say that with a little bit of the try is very heavily emphasized. I will pull together as much as I can and then open it up to you all to try and think, actually, I also did this stuff, right? So it won't be a exclusive, we just did this stuff. But yes, I will certainly try and contribute to that. Awesome. So over to release management.
Yes. Things were relatively cool last week. We did have some minor interruption late last week due to an incident. But overall things went okay. We got a little slowed down due to some maintenance work that was happening at the beginning of the week, but nothing terrible in my opinion. So firstly, so the number of packages, I think Ruben was doing a fantastic job when we started, but then we had to pause. Is this that first maintenance? Yeah, so there's the database upgrade that was happening in staging, the OS upgrades. So that kind of paused auto deploys for a little bit. We just never caught up. We just kept building more stuff. And then console underwent a upgrade, and that one kind of spread out across the entire week. But I was keeping track of that change request, and later on learned that they didn't actually need to make changes to Kubernetes. So at the end of the week, they completed the work, but I didn't actually need to block deployments at all in the first place. So that was something that just kind of organically was discovered over the course of time. And then at the end of last week, we had a incident with one of the components related to GitLab shell, where the container build mechanism changed slightly to reduce the size of the image, and a couple of other improvements, which reduced the image size by like 70%. So a rather hefty improvement, but that improvement also shined a light on a bug that was inside of our Helm chart, which had been living there for who knows how long. So instead of reverting the change to CNG, it was late in my day. A revert would have been beneficial because we would have had a new package ready for Graham anyways. The choice was just to go ahead and fix the bug inside of our Helm chart, because that was the easiest mechanism. It was quick, and then it just required us to upgrade our chart over the course of time. That was still risky because all chart upgrades carry a certain amount of risk, but this was prepared just in time for Graham to start his day and get that knocked out. So as far as the amount of packages we promoted, we're certainly lower than normal, mostly due to maintenance, because we only had, I think, one incident. Yeah, I think this was one that was fixed relatively quickly. Let's see, what else am I supposed to talk about?
A question on
Yes.
those maintenance things. So particularly on the one that we later discovered didn't need us to block stuff. Is there anything like, are we at a position where we could write down some kind of, you know, general guidelines, like if your change does this, this, and this, you don't need to block us? Or, you know, do we know things well enough to be able to do that?
I think that's very dependent on the maintenance. Like we could probably put together some guidelines, but it's going to be so use case specific. I'm not sure how helpful those guidelines may
Okay,
be.
yeah,
Because
okay.
like console is an example where off the cuff you would think, oh, well, that's going to be harmless because they're just rotating certificates and it's not going to touch the Kubernetes infrastructure, but it's still console. There's going to be leader elections within that service, and you don't know what that's going to do to the infrastructure. So I hesitate to do that because I don't know how beneficial it's going to be. Like you really need to understand the architecture and what services are running and that are going to be impacted by it.
Fair enough. Okay, great.
What is this one? Deployment frequency last month. We're on par. I think we had one more. Yeah, we had one more than last week comparatively, but we did okay despite the slow ramp up for the beginning of the week. But we're still on par with how often we deploy, which is good. Lead time for changes. I never know what to say for this chart. But like for the most part, we're on par with last week. So like, except for I don't know why we have this big bump at the beginning of each week, but we did not see that this week or last week. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because normally what I think you see on this one is, say, the big bumps usually are an indication of people merge stuff on the Friday and then we deploy it on the Monday is most likely what I think you see there. So it's interesting that we didn't have that. Did we have a family of friends or a PCL or something on the previous Friday?
No.
No? Yeah, who knows?
Friday was nice and calm. Yeah, so we're hovering right at the line. So I don't know. I think we should be happy with what we see on this chart.
I agree. Take it. It looks great. One thing related to these numbers, right? So I've got a lot more sort of thinking and stuff to put through on this, but these are I've made some fairly broad kind of claims in the self-serve blueprint, because a lot of these things that we talk through here, not the packaging one, but the other graphs, a self-serve team would be using something, ideally they'd be using the same charts as us. So I think that's where we can start to try and make some guesses of, okay, this stuff is useful and it's showing these things. And they will have a slightly different experience than us because their stuff will be much smaller and much simpler. But I think we can perhaps try some metrics out on the self-serve teams and then reapply them back onto auto deploys. Awesome. Great. And I know we've got a couple of issues on the delivery board already for kind of general improvements. So all good. Great. Is there anything else anyone wants to bring up on this recording? Yep, I shall stop the recording.